Hi, good afternoon, Geetha.
Hi, good afternoon, Shruti.
Welcome. I welcome everyone who's here for the Ideal Careers for Your Personality Masterclass with Geetha. Geetha, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us.
Thank you, Shruti. Our
So
pleasure.
everyone, has different strengths and weaknesses and traits that lend to their success in different areas. Personally, I love personal attractions, creative-driven nature of my job. And not to blow my own horn, but I'm not bad at what I do either. But if you do put me in another setting, say, data driven or a nursing facility, I don't think I would really thrive in a career like that, because I always believe we all have our very strong suits, and recognizing what type of personality you have is incredibly helpful in determining just what it is you should be doing with your life. In fact, I found this recent study of the impact of personality on career achievement really interesting. So they say while you very well could get involved in any career you choose, it's important to realize that your personality type greatly influences your professional success and happiness on that path. So Geetha, I leave the floor to you for you to take over on discussing what careers we should choose based on our personality type.
Sure. Thank you, Shruti. Hi, all of you. Thanks for registering for this session and, of course, signing up as well, because sometimes after registration, signing up is the next task that you guys will have to do. The format of the session is going to be very simple. I'm just going to introduce myself, and I'm going to share my own thought process of what do I think, from an ideal careers for each personality type. And of course, I want to let you guys know that this is not like a prescription to say if this is your career type, this is what you could do. In fact, the entire deck is really going to be very open and very relative to how we could relate to a lot of them who's gone through certain changes from a career perspective based on how they are and how they have honed themselves to. So it's going to be very simple, very informal. So allow me to take you through the deck, and then probably we will have an interactive session at the end. So that's how I'm going to format the session. Right, that's my first slide. So what I really want to convey through this is okay, so let me just start introducing myself. I was so kicked that I went off to the first slide. So my name is Geetha Thiagarajan, and I head the HR function for Altimetrik. And Altimetrik is a digital transformation company working with other large organizations and helping them digitally transform. And been with Altimetrik close to a little over a year, and have worked for other organizations like Societe Generale, ANZ, and Deutsche Bank in the past. Apart from the role that I do, I also do a few leadership coaching and few mentoring sessions. So that is me. And hence, with all, and I've spent spent about 18, 19 years being in HR, and I think I take pride in kind of saying that yes, we've met so many varied kind of people and different personality types as well. Because being in this profession, what happens is you would have done so much of assessment that as you're talking, you're already judging everybody, saying, "Oh, this personality, this individual could be this personality type or that personality type." Though I don't call myself judgmental, but I think it's just become a part of the role that you kind of start assessing people to see where they fit into the organization and so on. So that said, is there an ideal personality type for any kind of role? Actually, no. I know the answer could be disheartening, but actually there's nothing like, if you have 10 different skill set, then you're going to fit a particular job A or job B. So that's never going to happen. So that's what we're going to talk through. I think the key most important thing for any individual who's looking at career or to do anything in their life is to really play to their strengths, right? And it's important to know what your strengths are. a lot of us are, really carried away by looking at the rest of them in the world, saying this person has done that, or for example, Tesla, example of Tesla or example of Apple. We use them all the time as examples. But then, you could just, according to me, you could just read those stories and get inspired. But yeah, you cannot become that, because everyone's strength is different. If you remember few decades ago, there was only two professions people would talk about, either a doctor or an engineer. But with time, I think we all, shook hands with reality to say, those are not the only two professions. There are so many other professions. And when you play to your strength, obviously it's going to work to your advantage. Let me use some of the corporate examples. I don't know if you guys relate to this, the PIP, which is a poor performers. There's a process in organization where we kind of identify certain, poor performers, and we help them to kind of get out. Put a certain set of things that they have to complete, so that we help them get out of being a poor performer. But technically, if you see, maybe this is my personal view. I always find myself saying that probably we put the wrong person to do some job, and hence they've come up as poor performers. And in some of the experiments where we've tried moving them into different roles, they have really come out with flying colors. And this is something that I've done for years, so I could very bravely say that everyone has a strength, and I think it is for individuals to really reflect and see what their strengths are. And that is why this slide. If you get a fish out of water, and because the fish's strength is to swim. So if you get the fish on land, and it's never going to survive, and we cannot judge a fish based putting on the land and saying, can you swim? That's exactly my point. And the next slide. This is another story. I'm going to just have a lot of stories, and then at the end of the slides, we will talk about some of the data points, some relativity to how you could read these slides. This one is about tapping your potential. This is about tapping your potential. A lot of us kind of know about ourselves, and we kind of say, okay, this is what I can do. My question is, have you ever gone out of that comfort zone and tried something new that we've never done in the past? And yeah, more often than not, we wouldn't have, because because of the risk that you have to take, because of the ambiguity that is going to bring about, and hence there will be a lot of resistance. So, there is this little story about, wildlife, be it this cub that you're seeing on the slide, or the elephant. They're all tamed in a certain way, right? They're all tamed in a certain way. And after some time, what happens is they kind of believe that this is the way of life. For example, this cub is in a cage. So and this is a real story indeed. The cub is in a cage, and after a few years, as the cub was growing into a lioness, they kind of took off the cage. But the cub would not go out of the cage, and she would just walk within that cage, within the space, within the place where there was a cage. So this is again, I'm not saying this is how everyone is, but more often than not, this is what the case is, because we are taught certain things in a certain way, and we grew up believing that, and hence we haven't explored the regions that exist. So in fact, in the corporate, the story is, a lot of organizations, as they grow larger, they kind of have careers for every vertical based on that vertical. In fact, even today, I think across the board, that's how it is, right? And when they're hiring, they look for people saying the person should have spent so much time in a certain skill set, and so on and so forth. And you're like, we are really trying to stereotype some of those roles, and hence also look at matching some of the profiles. And of course, we find people and so on. But if you actually see, there are a lot of them who has the potential, but was never shown the mirror to say, probably this is, these are things that you could try. So there was a little experiment that was done, I think in Japan. Yeah, there was a little experiment that was done in Japan. And they had, the profiles of really all the achievers. they had the profiles of all the achievers, and like the known names, like Alibaba and so on. So they had some of the 6 to 7 resumes. I'm unable to remember who, but I definitely know the storyline, which the messaging there was. These were like really, really high profile, extremely done well in business kind of profiles, was given to a set of professors in a university, and they were asked to assess these profiles. And these guys assessed the profiles and said, oh, okay, I mean, from the academics, the guy didn't even cross his eighth, the other guy didn't even go to university, and so on. And finally, so pretty much all the 5 resumes were knocked off, saying, I don't think these are relative profiles. But then later, because this was a study which was really done to, kind of say how we all have an unconscious bias. And then later, when they really looked at the names of each of the profiles, it was very surprising, because one of them was Mark Zuckerberg. The other one was the guy who owns Virgin, the Virgin Fleet. So yeah, these are stories. So again, this is a reflection of how a lot of them are, having this bias about how a profile is supposed to be. And hence it becomes even more important for people who are in the active market to kind of have creative ways of knowing about themselves, and also being able to relate to the kind of jobs that's available. And so that's like, this is more about how many people have really reflected about themselves, a self-assessment, being really critical about ourselves, saying, okay, this is my strength, probably this is my weakness. In fact, even if there was like a random question asked, can you tell me about your strength? People would immediately say, okay, these are my strengths. But how many people will really say in that pace as to what are your developmental opportunities? And that is very rare. And I think that is human mind, right? Because we look at the positives. When it comes to oneself, it's only the positives. Very rarely you would really call upon yourself saying that, I'm not efficient for a particular job or so on. And analyzing your strengths and weaknesses, that is key. So there are various tools that's available in the market. There are various tools available in the market, and as simple as the SWOT analysis. I think this is something I recommend to all my team members, or even when we're having career discussions. As simple as a SWOT, just for you to know what are your strengths and what are the weaknesses or developmental areas that you have, and accepting feedback. I think whenever there's a discussion where someone gives a feedback, immediately that person, and especially if the feedback is something that you don't like, I think it's not just about not liking the feedback, we also stop liking that individual. Having the subjectivity, the objectivity of why we're having the discussion becomes key. And if you really reflect after the session, probably if you really take that 10 minutes, to reflect on what your strength and who's giving you feedback. And maybe sometimes you won't have even heard, because that's the feedback you didn't want to hear. Because the mind really operates in a way that it will only pick up the feedback or the comments or anything the mind is looking for. Something that you're not looking for, when it comes your way, you're not ready to accept it. And again, I'm not saying all of you, I'm saying in general, that is how it is. And I mean, and it is a human trait. So we just can't, kind of blame this on anybody. But I think there comes an opportunity for us to reflect and say, all right, this is a critic, but then it is okay. I'll try and change, or I will see what I can do about it, because certain things you can change, certain things you can't change. I'm never going to be someone who will impose things, saying, okay, here's the feedback, you have to definitely work on this to become this. So you will have to really, really play to your strength. That's the key message for me throughout the slide. You have to play to your strength. And whenever you are critiqued at home, at work, in your friend circle, whatever, there must be a reason, right? Because if more than one person is saying something which is not very pleasant for you, instead of shying away from that entire thing, I would suggest reflect on that as to why somebody is saying that. because in today's world it's become so dynamic that nobody has that much time to kind of share with anyone, give a detailed feedback, help them get through things. It's so dynamic. So when you kind of hear something, it is as individual for each of us to pick it up and reflect and decide if you want to work on it. I mean, my personal style is when I get feedback, I reflect on it. And then if I think it is, something which I kind of, at least within myself, I feel like, yes, maybe this is something which is important and I should change, I immediately pick up, I'll try and do whatever I can to change. And there are there's some feedbacks which I can't even relate to. In that case, I mean, of course, I'll listen to it, but I'm not going to work on it. Yeah, don't call me rude here, but I'm just saying that's my style, and everybody has their own style of how you operate, right? Because but knowing what is how you're perceived is extremely important, because in today's world, perception is what makes the individual's social figure. I don't know if you guys have watched Ratatouille movie. So if you remember this character, he was the Antonigo who used to critique the food all the time. Right. So how do I know my personality type? Is there a mantra? Actually, no. There are multiple ways how you can reflect and kind of know about yourself. If you can, if you really want to do this exercise, if it was a workshop, I would have taken half a day to just do this one slide. But I'm just going to, kind of say how I would have done this, and probably in your free time, you could try doing this. It's going to help. What do you know about yourself? Because I think as individuals, we only know the positive side of ourselves a lot. So if you could kind of, put a lot of things about yourself from the time you started your academics, your school, anything that you remember about you, your successes, the points in life that you thought you could have done better. If you could put all of that frames who you are. And sometimes when you put that on a board or, write it somewhere and look at it, I think that's a great reflection about oneself. And it's important, if you're really wanting to know about your personality type, the first exercise you should do is this. What do you know about yourself without anybody influencing as to who you are? What's your belief about yourself? And I'm sure, it runs into pages. I'm sure when you start, it's going to be a struggle, because I've done this exercise with a group. When they start, it's so difficult. They can't even put more than, their name and their profession, or probably their demographic status, saying I'm married, I belong to this place, and so on. And if you really dig deep and look at, okay, when you were school, what were the things that you're really proud of? What were you involved in? Who influenced you in school? Who do you look up to? And then slowly move on from school to wherever you are at this point of time, and that becomes a beautiful reflection of who you are, and helps for you to build a base for assessing your personality. And the second one is, what have you heard others tell about you? Generally, yes. If it is good things, you will definitely remember. And in the second point of the exercise, I think you should just think of who are the ones that you don't like, because more often than not, you won't like someone because they would have said something that you won't like about you. So it is also important to gather the points, because you can't build a whole story just having all the happy side of it, because you'll be able to appreciate the happy side only if you know the other side. So it's good to even remember that and put that out there. If you're doing an exercise on a board, then put this, or if you're writing it up, put this in the side, so that you're able to look at both and see, are you what you think you are, or what's a perception that you've actually built for others. That's the second one. Your style at work and home don't have a big differentiation, because a lot of them, when you talk to them, they say, I'm very different at home, but I'm very different at work, and so on. I kind of believe personality traits are something that, that is built over so many years, that it's not going to be very easy to change it. And there is, there's no point shying away from it. But then, like I said, the opportunity is to kind of build on the strength. And sometimes if you really look at all of that, you're reflecting, you will find what you hear from home about you, or what you hear from your work colleagues or your social circle. there could be something which is in common. In fact, there must be a lot of them in common, unless you don't have too many masks that you are dealing with. So we all have put up this mask in every situation, right? At work, you try to put on a mask. You don't become different. You can't. People saying this, I'm very different at work versus home. What that means is you put on a different mask. You are that same person that you wrote in the first line about yourself. Right? But then at work, you have a different mask. At your social circle, you have a different mask. To your children, you have a different mask. Yeah, and I think all of us have learned to be that way. But again, we've kind of forgotten to really look into ourselves to understand who we are. So that's where the first point, reflection, should help. And stick to your natural style. Like I kind of said in the beginning, yes, it's important to kind of listen to some of those motivation talkers, or listen to some of those things that's changed for people. It's good to know about all the good things that's happening, and good to be influenced by them. But if that's not your natural style, you should not pick it up and try and be that. So again, it's different for different people. So the entire deck is really based on what I think. So it's for you to kind of assess and see what works for you. Yeah, I think I talked about this as well. So as you were, as you grew up, do you remember what was your strength? If you could remember that, can you relate that to what, how in today's world, what are the things that you're doing, and how has those strengths evolved for you to support in the way you are today? If you could even relate to just one of them, then I would think you should spend more to see all the other strengths that you had and that you've not nurtured. Because life becomes so busy that we do not have time to nurture any of our strengths. We just get sucked up in our work, or at home, at work, or whatever it is. So I think it's always very important to keep nurturing our strengths, because that's what's going to take you to the next level. Yeah, I think we've talked about it. And yeah, from a profession perspective, today the number of options that exist, the known options are umpty, and the unknown are even more. We'll also talk about that. So these are, some of the examples. I'm sure, you all know each of them who's there on the slide. So the first person, of course, is Walt Disney. And I don't know if you remember his story. He was actually fired for lack of imagination, and he was said that he had no good ideas, and his business went bankrupt. And you even relate to that sentence versus what he is today. Yes, yeah, so why I'm telling this is, again, I don't want to sound like a motivation speaker or something. Why I'm telling that is, you will hear a lot of things from everyone else, but then it is for you as an individual to really assess who you are. Because if you have that gut saying, okay, this is my strength, this is what I'm going to play by, then there's no stopping. And I think Oprah Winfrey is, again, all the names all the pictures that's there on the slide is something that I need not even talk about. And Oprah Winfrey, if you kind of remember the past, or heard about her, or read about her, she lived in extreme poverty and was sexually abused from the age of 9, and was even fired from the first job for, they said that she was unfit for television job. But today she's made such a mark that there's so many people who want to be Oprah Winfrey. And some of her videos that you would find on YouTube are very, very motivational. And I don't know if you, the red jacket lady, I don't know if you have seen that. There was, recently a lot of these videos went viral. And she is, her name is Muniba Mazari, and she's from Pakistan. And she also has a very, very strong story for herself. In fact, she's called as the Iron Lady of Pakistan. Got married when she was 18, met with an accident, and pretty much, her entire life was shattered. And the doctor kept coming and saying her that, you can't do this, you can't paint, you can't do this, you can't have a child. With all of that, I think she just, it was just her motivation. She knew what her strength was, and she was not ready to let go. And here she is. Today, she's again a very popular figure. And who doesn't like Harry Potter? So that's J.K. Rowling. She was a single mother, and in fact, before she could really become the stardom could hit her, she was penniless, jobless, and her first manuscript was rejected 12 times. So yeah, I mean, like I said in the beginning, yes, these are again stories to get inspired and probably pick up things that you can relate to, and see what are your strengths and play by it. All right. Now, all that said, if you ask me, am I recommending any assessment tools? No, I'm not recommending any assessment tools, but I will just give you some of the options that's available in the market, and it is for you to see how it works for you. So MBTI is a very common assessment tool. It's the Myers and Briggs test indicator, and it kind of tells every individual about their personality type. And I have tried this myself, and in fact, the personality types don't change in so many years. I did one 10 years ago, and I did one recently. It just remained the same, unless you have like a life-changing event or something. And the next one is RSI. That's the Richmond Survey Instrument, and generally used to understand what are the career motivators for every individual. So that's again available in the market. Sorry. The third one is Enneagram, and this is something which is available online itself. You could just give it a shot and see what kind of person you are. Sometimes doing this. See, I'm myself someone who can design assessment tools. So so I can just give you a gist of how these assessment tools are done. So based, for example, there are traits that we already identify, saying, okay, these are the traits that we want to find. And there are a lot of questions built around that. And of course, the questions are asked in different ways to ensure that the same answers picked up all the time, to ensure there's a consistency in defining or letting the person know what their personal traits are. So these are again available in the market, and sometimes it's like horoscope. So if not everything is matching, probably at least half of it at least tells you what it is, and you'll have to use multiple ways to kind of do this assessment about yourself. The fourth one is mind map. I mean, this is the simplest thing anybody could come up with. There's no particular way of doing this. You just put, like in the first exercise where we talked about everything about yourself, and then you reflect on it. But it'll be good to have this mind map done along with somebody who knows you, so that you're able to get the good and bad, and you're able to kind of get a picture about yourself. Sometimes you'll be surprised to see, what this mind map could throw as results, because all of us have a perception about ourselves, saying this is what we are, this is how people perceive us. But then when you really, get to the reality, it could look really, really different. Yes, there are some rarities where people exactly, get the mind map of what they think versus what they have come up with. But otherwise, normally I haven't seen it's so similar from what they thought to what's come up on the deck. And with anything, any assessment you do, any feedback you do, the final tool that you have to use is reflect. Because when you reflect, you're able to get more examples, you're able to relate to, you're able to see how many, the consistency of the message that has been, told in all the assessment tools. And I would always think you as an individual will be the right person to assess for yourself than anybody else kind of telling you that this is what it is. That's again a bit of recommendations on the tools that I had. And find, if possible, it's really important to have a good coach or a mentor. Because having a coach or a mentor, if you look at them, their agenda is never to overpower their coachee or their mentee. Their agenda is always to ensure that their coachee or mentee is able to find more value in themselves than anybody else. So it helps them to identify their own potential. So it's important to have, it's again a choice. Some people have, some don't have, but a lot of them who've really done very well in their career always has, at least a couple of them as mentors or coach. Again, you got to select the right mentor or coach, because, there are a lot of options. There are some of them are extremely commercial, some of them are extremely genuine. Yeah, it's for you to assess. It's like anything that you buy, you're going to test what works for you. So that's the due diligence that you'll have to do definitely when you're identifying a coach or mentor for yourself. By having a good coach or a mentor, it's going to really, enable you to understand your own thought process. And it allows you to, kind of bound. You have a coach or a mentor as a bouncing board when you're making decisions or when you're reflecting on something and so on. But you must know that a coach is definitely not someone who is an expert in your subject, whereas a mentor is. A mentor generally is someone who is very good in a subject that you want to be mentored at. A coach is somebody who will, kind of be your guiding, if I can say guiding angel, but then helps you to make the right decisions, will keep probing you, because in any other environment, you're not going to allow people to ask you so many questions in order to put you down or put you up. But with a coach, it is an agreed environment where you're going to allow yourself to be vulnerable so that you're able to make the most out of that session. So again, there's an option, but it's really good to have somebody like that. All right. So I thought, we'll also talk about some of the careers people have, kind of taken up. Of course, being in Bangalore, I don't know, people, maybe the guys who've joined this session could also be out of Bangalore, I reckon. But generally, the Bangalore market is so much of IT and IT and IT. So, and everything is, surrounded with IT. Okay, if there's an IT company, yes, you need HR people for IT, you need finance people for IT, you need risk people for IT. So that's how it is designed. But if you really step out of that, of this well, step out of the syndrome of frog in the well, and you really look at it, it's surprising to see that there are so many other professions, and people are extremely happy doing, doing what they were doing. Also, remember, none of them started their academics thinking that these are the jobs that they're going to do. Right? I know a friend of mine who's, who kind of gets stale bread from all the places, and then there's a process that she does, and then they make magnums and they sell it off, and it's a huge business. And you must have seen all those funky one-liners on T-shirts. Yeah, so there are professions where people just write these statements and sell it off to the companies who are making T-shirts. And the ethical hacker, I think, if you guys are from IT, or if you are, if you have somebody in the family who's from IT, you will relate to this. So hackers, yes, it's not a good profession, but there are companies who hire ethical hackers. There are jobs like toy designers, baby name consultant, paper towel sniffers, because of the allergy and all that stuff. Companies are investing in all these weird jobs now. Face feelers, like the cosmetic companies, kind of have some of the women will come and try whatever they've created to see, how do they feel, so that their go-to-market strategy is built on that. And bet testers, I don't know if you guys saw recently, even that job was also up on LinkedIn saying it was actually called a bet tester. So that person's job is to really ensure, when they test a bed, they should tell if the bed is made in such a way that people will be comfortable in. Fortune cookie writers. When you go to those Chinese restaurants, have you seen those little fortune cookies that you crack, and you find those little paper little sentence in that, which really gives you a kick. Yeah, so that's another profession. And homework helpers. So what this means is for kids, the homework that they have to do. Now, given the kind of engagement all the parents have, there are so many people who cropped up as, who would help the kids do homework. And coffee taster, I think that is something which has been there for quite some time. I hear it's even a very extremely high paid job. And food critique, yeah, in fact, nobody creates this job as food critique. People are critiquing, and then based on a lot of these followers, they start saying that I'm a food critic. The profession becomes a food critic. I was just able to gather some of them, and I actually put only the professions where I knew I had at least one or two people that I could talk to and I could relate to what they're doing. But there's so many other jobs that I kind of came across, but I don't know anybody in those professions, and hence I didn't put that up. So ideally, what the slide means is nobody kind of, says, I am going to be like a fortune cookie writer. Nobody's going to say, this is what I want to become. then slowly, you kind of, your natural style comes out, your natural strength comes out, and then you'll have to start kind of nurturing that, and that's where this leads into. So what I'm trying to say is there is no one career meant for a particular personality trait. You have to kind of keep exploring and seeing what's your strength. But also, the other thing I would like to also say is, but you have to stay focused. You keep hopping from one thing to other, one thing to other, that's never going to keep you grounded. I mean, there are people who can still do that, but in a general sense, I would say, if you found what your strength is, if you kind of know that this is the kind of job that's going to give you the satisfaction in all aspects, then you should really stay focused and do more from that particular focus that you have. So yeah, so when we're talking about the personality trait and how is it going to map to your career and so on, what's happening in the corporate side? What's happening in every organization? So what's happening in every organization is, yes, everybody is hired into a company with the assumption that they can do set of work that they are asked to do, but the the economy is changing so much. The market dynamics is so much. I mean, if you saw in the last 5 years, so many things have come up in the market. There are bots, there are AIs, there are so many more newer technologies. Guys who always call themselves techies are now saying, "My God, I know this new technology is something I have to go and learn." So there's so much more that is happening, and hence, people who are working in any companies as well cannot be in the comfort zone saying, "Okay, I've learned that, I've done that, and now I'm settled in the job." They got to keep upskilling, and hence even organizations obviously will help in upskilling these people, and so they do a lot of bespoke programs, right? Because we can't say, all right, I want to upskill the entire organization, and hence I'm going to have one course for all of you. So even organization understand that it has to be bespoke, because everyone is different, everyone's personality type is different, everyone's motivation is different, everyone's career aspirations are different. And hence, this bespoke approach is the thing now in the market. So you will find a lot of them talk about, for every individual, we take care of them the way that their strengths are. So yeah, when you're in corporate, yes, you have a bit of an ecosystem or support system to help you get there. But if you're individuals or in your own business or trying to do something, for everything there's this little framework, but you could see what works for you. And letting go of older ways of operating. So with all the change, one thing which is a derailer or which could be weighing down is a lot of us get stuck in the old way of doing things, though there's newer technology, though there is, newer options of dealing with things. Sometimes it just happens that we end up saying, no, this is how I've done this all the time, so I don't want to change. And that is something that we have to break the shackles. And development interventions is another thing which you will again hear in a lot of corporates. It's just not about assessing what we should upskill people with, but also support them on the interpersonal skill. Because with there was this thing in the market for a few years going on saying, oh, there are so many bots, and there's so many other ways of doing things. So what's going to happen? So people are no longer going to be needed by business. So there was this little myth which was running in everybody's head, or for people whose jobs were becoming obsolete. But technically, if you see, the interpersonal skill is something that you can never take away from. You can never get a bot to have the interpersonal skill that any human being would have. In fact, when people talk to me, that's what I tell them. Yes, there are bots, yes, there are AIs, but then I can never replace human beings. For example, it seems Tesla is talking about driverless cars. So what happens to all the drivers? I don't know, I read this article somewhere, and somebody said, so yeah, with all the driverless cars, you still need drivers to, kind of train those bots, or to maintain those bots, or even like an anchor for the bots. So as jobs are becoming obsolete, as the base level, the non-intelligent jobs are becoming obsolete, there are much more intelligent jobs that are being created. So personally, I feel, with all this intervention of technology and all of this, it is really good because it's really putting everybody in a better pedestal. Everyone's doing better jobs. I mean, it's no longer, you're not never going to have small jobs. Everybody is going to be doing better jobs. And what I also understand from some of the surveys is people are going to have job tours. What that means is nobody's going to stick to one place saying I will do only this kind of job. Based on this trend, they're just going to try multiple jobs, and they're going to be touring. When I say touring, it's a job tour. Multiple jobs is what they're going to be doing. I really find that interesting. I don't know when we'll get there, but I really find that interesting. Right, we're almost at the end of the slide. Yeah, one thing, again, I don't want to sound preachy, but it's very important to be relevant in the market condition, right? I mean, you can't say this is how I do and I'm not going to be bothered about what's happening around me. Then the individual themselves become obsolete. It's important to be, knowing about what's happening around you, and that's where I say be relevant. If you're in technology, then yeah, you should be attending tech talks. You should be knowing what's happening in the technology. Only then you'll be able to connect the dots. And if you're non-technology as well, look at the forums, look at communities which are talking about the next level development in those areas. And yeah, don't stop learning. In fact, I've been thinking, if given an opportunity, I would want to learn coding, because I'm seeing so much of hues and cries for people who are in the technology world. And never stop yourself from trying new things, because for the fear of failing, a lot of them don't try new things. But I think you should create a safe environment to try new things and explore. That is when you really are able to tap your potential. That said, yep, so that is all I had with my slides. To conclude, of course, really didn't want to be preachy. I just wanted to, relate to all the other happenings across, and kind of give my view of what I thought, how careers can be matched for each personality types. So that is
Thank
it.
Thank you so much, Geetha. That was fantastic. I learned quite a few things from there. I would have loved to be, I love to on fortune cookie slogan writer. I mean, how cool is that?
Isn't it?
Yes, very. Thank you. Geetha, I have a few questions for you.
Sure.
Is it true in your experience that your personality type and corresponding preferences can make it easier to work in some occupations and harder to work in others? And as a result, people with certain personality traits find themselves in certain types of occupations and workplaces more often than in others.
Okay. So let me just try attempting to that question. So yes, I think the basic personality type is going to play a huge role in the profession that you are in. But like I said, people have become really smart in, putting those masks according to the environment that they are in. So it just depends on how controlled you are with your masks on versus without masks. And depending on that, you can either kind of, confine to say you suit only a particular profession, or it could be like, you are someone who are extremely flexible enough to fit any of the profession. In fact, MBTI, if you've done any of the assessments in MBTI, you will find that MBTI kind of says if you are a particular trait. For example, if you're an ENTJ, then you will be in management, or you could be good in management, something like that. It's quite interesting. But then, yeah, it's always, like I said, you look at it and reflect as to how close it is to you as an individual.
Thank you. Geetha, can we just do a quick pop quiz? According to some material that I've collected prior to our masterclass, there are 4 dimensions of personality, right?
Yes.
And according to them, they say there's an energy style that is 51% introvert and 49% extrovert. Yeah. What do you think? What kind of job would fit that personality?
If you actually see the introvert and extrovert, the way sometimes you read that is also slightly different, because generally people think introvert is someone who will not talk so much, or who's very quiet, whereas an extrovert is someone who's really peppy and who's very who kind of gives comfort to everybody who's in their company, kind of stuff. The way I kind of read that is, introverts are people who really derive their motivation or energy from self, from inside, and extroverts are people who derive the energy from outside.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so if you could relate to that. So from an introvert perspective, I would think the jobs which are more thinking, which are more analytical, which needs a lot of analysis, which needs a lot of projection. All of these are something which I think are introvert kind of jobs. And extroverts are, people who derive energy from outside, are the sales, the business development. These are things that I think will fit the extrovert kind of profiles.
Thank you. What about thinking style, which is the second dimension of personality? That is, sensors is around 73%, and being intuitive is 27%.
Okay. Again, this though these traits are assessed, I think people become very smart based on situations.
True,
Because when you're assessing the trait, people are generally very honest, so that they exactly know what they are about. But then, given that we are human beings with one extra sense than animals, so we just become smart in dealing with being sensory or being intuitive, and our reflex are really high. So, and hence, you kind of become you more react to the situation more than kind of really showing the trait that you are. And hence, if you see, though you're giving a higher score to the sensory, according to the survey that you've did, I think it really depends on every individual, because all of them have both, but they kind of demonstrate this based on the situation that they are in, which matches best.
Thank you. Thanks, Geetha. So I'm going to end this masterclass with a few, a few nuggets with our audience.
Sure.
So they say pragmatists, they enjoy using logical systems to generate results. We have caretakers who enjoy work when they can do things that help others. We have theorists who are interested in careers that allow them to think outside the box. And we have the empathists who enjoy careers that make the world a better place. Geetha, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Sure. Thank you so much, Shruti. And
thank you very much. I truly, truly appreciate this. And I'm sure our viewers do too.
Thank you, all the participants, for bearing with me for so long.
Thanks. Goodbye. Have a good weekend.
All of you too. Thank you.